All right, folks, this is the Q&A panel with Colin Bresler. His film is feature film, The Mummy Murders. So I want to start off talking about you first, Colin, before we get to the film. I was curious, when I looked at your body of work, the majority of what it looks like you've done so far is in television. So I was intrigued what drew you to TV more so versus film, it seems.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I started out at School of Visual Arts in New York, studying film. I'm old, so back then there was very little to no digital world. It was pre-digital analog.
Okay.
So I learned cinema and filmmaking, and I took cinematography classes. I left school and I was like, oh yeah, movies, movies, movies. I joined the union. I was a union AC working on feature films in New York City area, really like northeast of the country area.
Okay.
And as that went on, I also was moonlighting as a production assistant in reality TV slash television world, mostly cooking shows and stuff. Um,
Okay.
because I'm sure you're aware of this, but especially back then, independent cinema in New York, especially the type of stuff I was doing was kind of low budget.
Yeah.
So the money wasn't great, and I was trying to build a life. So television PA money was about the equivalent of AC money, first AC focus puller money in movies. So I was kind of like in a split reality or split career. And then um, I just got opportunities in television doing camera operating, whereas I was in independent film in New York doing film, but focusing on assistant camera work. And so this was paying more, the television world.
Got
And
it.
so I never took up I never put all my feet, so to speak, into the television world. I always was doing film stuff on the side, or I do a television show, then I do like a short film or a indie feature. And so I knew film is my love, but TV was paying the bills, and my career in television was growing and growing. And I was camera operating, and then I was director of photography on television shows, and so it was just kind of like. And I don't want to sound like I'm poo-pooing that, because I'm really not. I'm very blessed. I don't want to come off like, oh, he hates television. No, no, I loved it. I mean, honestly, reality television taught me so much as a filmmaker
Sure.
about how to collect story and to work fast. And so, but yeah, so to long story short, basically, yeah, I mean, I kind of, it was that split screen world, and I went down the rabbit hole of television because of opportunity, but I always kept a foot in the cinema world as well.
Gotcha. Thanks for explaining that. Curious. I know that horror appeals to you. The entire genre appeals to you. So I'm curious, twofold question. For one, what is it about the genre itself? And number two, why pick a genre that's seemingly so hard to sell to people? Because I know everybody thinks horror is just a go-to and we all love it, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is hard to sell. There is a niche audience. Um, as far as horror, it's funny. I never liked horror movies as a fan.
Hmm.
My wife, and back then my girlfriend, um, loves horror. She was obsessed with it. So she lived in Newark, New Jersey. I would go visit her, and she'd take me to this little hole in the wall DVD rental place when
Okay.
that existed, by the way.
Yeah.
And we'd watch horror movies all the time. And the thing, I'll be honest with you, because of my cinematography background, I loved the cinematography of horror movies, and
Sure.
I loved what they were doing with it. And as a writer, as someone, I love film, and I knew that at that time in my life, I had been doing television for about 10 years. I knew that I wanted to do films, and I was like, I think I'm ready to direct. And so honestly, it was it was a calculated decision. I'm not gonna lie. I my passion was always sort of drama, sci-fi ish type stuff, like kind of you know things, thoughtful type movies where it's like passionate and those kind of things. Um, I never saw myself doing horror, but I knew that horror connects to a very specific audience pretty straightforward wise. So like that was the calculated part. Was I know because of my relationship with my wife and how she was exposing me all these indie horror, whatever horror, I like, oh, okay, so there's a whole world here. There's a very dedicated fan base.
Mhm.
Yes, you're correct. It does turn a lot of people off. There's a lot of people that I meet today that go, they're like, what kind of movies do you make? I say horror, and they're like, oh, I don't watch those. I don't like, I don't like those. You know what I mean? Whereas you don't meet anyone that goes, "Oh, what do you make? Drama? Oh, I don't watch drama. That freaks me out." That's not a thing. So, yeah, you do have to be, you have to understand going into horror that there's gonna be a more of a turn off to certain audiences, but you hope that you can get into that horror world where they start to trust you as your talents and your abilities and say, yeah, I like this person's stuff, and I want to follow their career and see what's next. And if you can get there, which is very hard, I'm not saying I'm there, then you've created an audience that will probably stick with you for a while.
Yeah, good point, actually. So I'm curious if I were to ask, or if I were to respond to this and say, okay, what's my favorite horror movie? Because I'm going to ask you this. So what I'm not getting is today's world. Like everybody seems to like it's just got to be more and more and more sensationalized. Like for instance, I hate Michael Myers and he scares me to death, but Halloween is like some of my favorite because it's old school. Nightmare on Elm Street, old school. Nowadays, we have the Terrifiers and the Jigsaws of the world. And I'm just like, God, it's gore and blood and all of this good stuff. So as the movie maker, besides your own film, what's kind of your favorite out there? I mean, do you steer towards the old school, or now with all of the new age stuff, where do you stand with all of this?
So I'm going to cop out and say two. Um, I'm going to go back in the day. I love. I would say it's my favorite. I know people will say it's not horror, or maybe it's horror, but I love The Thing. Remember with John
Oh
Carpenter's
yeah.
The Thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie. And so um, that's my favorite, probably of all time. Um, Nowadays, I really love Hereditary. Um,
Really?
and yeah, I really love that movie. So I've kind of fallen in love with like Long Legs, Hereditary. I know they're not the same type of, but I really enjoy what's going on in horror with those kind of films. I know that certain horror fans that sort of gravitate to Terrifier, like you said,
Yeah.
are not as into those movies per se, but I think I love that there's these artists kind of dabbling in the horror realm and doing these kind of very artful, interesting things with the cinema and
Yeah.
cinematography of it. That I don't know, as a filmmaker, I mean, I'm a film nerd, so like it definitely gets me in. It gets me excited to watch how their usage of shots and motif and like ambiance and everything. And I know it's not for everyone, but those movies. Like I said, Hereditary, Midsummer, the stuff Robert Eggers is doing. I mean, I really enjoy what they're doing as filmmakers in the horror genre. And to be honest with you, I agree with you. I'm not really a big horror fan. I don't really gravitate to films that are more about shock than the value of doing something with cinema and being creative. I just it doesn't do that much for me personally. And I'm not poo pooing for anybody watching. I'm not poo pooing those movies. They're not for me. Like I
Right.
prefer psychological stuff or ghost or demon stuff where
Yeah.
it's just playing with the medium and really creeping me out.
So would it be fair to say, if I guessed, you're probably a M. Night Shyamalan fan then?
I like a lot of his stuff. I
Okay.
despised the last movie he did, Trap. Yeah, I did. And to be honest, I grew up in Philadelphia, so I
Okay.
really love what he's done with Philadelphia market and
Yeah.
everything as a filmmaker. And I do think he's a brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. I found the last film to be lazy. I mean, I know that's an ugly thing to say, but I don't know what it was about it. I didn't like the writing. I thought the story, and maybe I missed the point. Maybe there was something about it that he was going for, but
I did too.
it felt very, yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but it just felt, it didn't feel like him. He's like you said. I mean, the reason you probably said I might like him is because he
Yeah.
does like really good ambiance. His stories kind of keep you guessing and keep you interested.
Yes.
That movie, that movie just felt very forced. All the twists and turns
Yeah.
felt very forced, and they didn't feel earned. And I was like, anyway, I know you didn't want to do a trap review video, but yeah, no, I like his work. I mean, I'm definitely not going to say I don't like. I like his work a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And hopefully if M. Night Shyamalan ever watches this, I'm sorry. We still love you. It's not that we don't
Oh
like
yeah,
you. Everybody has a bad
if he's
film.
watching, I love you. You're a big inspiration for me. I actually, I actually worked as a production assistant on The Sixth Sense. You never talked to me,
Oh,
which is fine. I
ooh.
respect that, but
I love that. I love The Sixth Sense. See, now that to me is horror. We could talk about this all days, but we're sorry, M. Night. Please don't hate us if you watch this.
yeah,
Okay, we'll move on
please
to
don't,
something
please don't.
positive. All right, let's talk about Bresler Productions. I know, of course, besides shooting your own films, you also have acting classes and social media marketing videos and all sorts of goodies. So, if I were to ask you on the production side of things and all that you offer, what is the one big thing that you think you want to expand on coming up in 2025 as far as with your production company?
Wow, that's a really good question. Well, so I just partnered with Fourth Quarter Entertainment, which we've kind of become one entity.
Okay.
And down here in Texas, I'm in Texas, by the way. I don't know if
Right.
that's
Yes, I
obvious,
do.
but yeah. So we just form. We're forming. We're doing a lot. It's what I'm about to say is going to be kind of sound bigger than it is, but we started a profit, and we're doing a lot. I'm really trying to teach. I'm in South Texas. I'm really trying to bring a better sort of infrastructure to the area. There isn't a lot of infrastructure south of Austin here. So
Oh,
we're trying to bring a lot of film schooling and arts programming to underprivileged and special needs kids to teach
nice.
them, you know, and you'll understand, but and the filmmakers watching them, I'm trying to teach them about not directing and not about screenwriting, right? But about gripping and doing gaffer, lighting work and
Nice.
being an assistant and being a sound person or a boom operator, because they, this. I mean, a lot of people, I was this when I was 18 and went to film school, like everybody there's, I want to be a director, but nobody there, the first day they don't go, what do you guys want to be? And a guy raises his hand and says, I want to be a second assistant camera person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and but people don't know that in Hollywood, particularly, that's a career. I mean, people are a second assistant with a house and a mortgage, and so I'm just trying to expose younger people that never thought they love cinema and all that, but they never thought of it as a career because they think it's like I might like getting to the NBA or something.
Right.
Because you and I both know becoming the director of a Marvel movie is like becoming a part of the NBA. I mean, it's
Oh,
very hard to get there. So
okay.
I'm like, well, you don't have to get to be the NBA player. You can work on the NBA team and be a grip or be a dolly grip or an AC or even art department or whatever, a second assistant editor. But I just want to, I think that because I didn't want to be a cinematographer. I didn't even know what it was. I got to school and then I was like, that's so cool. Like that person does lighting. And
Yeah.
I fell in love with lighting at 18, 19 years old. But if I wasn't exposed to it, I would have been writing and directing and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we both know it's really hard to break into writing, directing,
Yeah.
but it's not as hard becoming a DIT in the camera department, or getting
Absolutely.
a production assistant job on your next movie, like someone like you or me or the people in your film festival, like
Yeah.
becoming a production assistant on their sets and making $100 a day or whatever the rate might be. So
Mhm.
anyway, I learned. So we're doing that, and we have a bunch of other movies that we're working on. So I'm nearing 50, and so I do want to try to give back in terms of to kids that were like me that just have no idea what this business is except for loving the movies.
Yeah.
And so that's a new big thing for me. I never thought I'd be involved in a nonprofit and anything like that. So I'm really excited about it, and so we have a lot of cool stuff going on.
That's very, very cool. I'm excited for you just listening to it. That's awesome. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Um, so before we get to actually talking about this very scary film that frightens me and many other people that's done quite well in the festival, I want to talk about this because I think it's super important. You were incredibly vulnerable and generous with something that you shared in an interview, and I'd like to have you expand on it a bit. I know one of the things that you struggle with is also something I struggle with quite some time, which is suffering from things like severe anxiety and OCD. I've had a huge issue with that since my partner passed, etc. And I don't think people really realize that although a lot of us in the creative world struggle with mental health issues, how very trapping and confining and just suffocating it is to live like this. So if someone's watching this today and they have the same struggles, how do you advise them to continue on despite these challenges?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I was diagnosed in 2020. It was something very fortunate that what COVID unfortunately and fortunately thrusted upon my life, because I was really, really struggling. As I know you can relate to, I was really struggling with my life at that point. And then COVID hits, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't work. And it was horrible. So COVID did give me a chance to say, well, I'm not doing well. So I got diagnosed with OCD, anxiety disorder, and I didn't even know what that was. I thought OCD was like washing your hands a lot. That's all I
Yeah.
understood of it. And that's why I never even considered it. And then when I was told about it, and this psychiatrist was kind of breaking down what it is, I was like, oh my God, that's me. And I remember I cried like a baby when I first realized that's who I was. Because, and I'm sure there's someone or people listening that maybe don't even know what they have, and it's the worst feeling not knowing what's going on. Because I mean, I was 46 when I got diagnosed. I had a lot of problems from 18 to 46
Hmm.
coping. And but one of the hardest struggles was I never understood what was happening. So I would mask, I would do all the things, right, that everybody does.
Yeah.
I would, just push it aside. And I do not in any way recommend that. I think one, definitely get help. You know, whether it be therapy if you can afford it, or your insurance covers, whatever. Secondarily, there are some incredible videos on YouTube about if it's depression or anxiety, about different things that help you. I know for me, meditation changed my life. I thought meditation was like a hippie yoga thing or
Yeah.
something. And by the way, I did yoga. I did yoga. I don't want to hate on you. I love yoga.
Okay.
But I never, I was always like, oh, what's this breathing stuff got to do with any, but when I learned how it coordinates with what I was going through, it really helped. So I definitely would say, like, if you know for sure getting through the day is hard, very hard, and you're having to just bottle things up, I would say that's a clear sign going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
I would say that try to recognize, okay, so I'm bottling something up here. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I think the first step is trying to figure out what it is. And by the way, that could be self diagnosis in terms of doing good research, but looking into your symptoms and trying to figure out if it is, oh, I obsessively think about something that's illogical, but I'm always thinking about it, and I think it's going to happen to me, whatever it is, or depression. Just don't ignore it. Get help, and because I bottled forever, and until, like I said, until not COVID, but before COVID, it was becoming too much. I couldn't put it away anymore, and I was really scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm not winning this fight anymore, and it's starting to really, really become hard to get through that day. Whereas in the past, it was hard some days, other days was, easy, and then other days was moderately easy or difficult.
Sure.
And it wasn't until every day was becoming very difficult that I said, and COVID punched me in the face, that I said, oh, I got to do something. I've got to take this seriously. I also had an incredible partner in my wife who really helped push me, and she was so supportive. So, I mean, if you don't have that, you know, be your own partner, really don't just push it aside. Like,
Yeah.
because the truth, I thought there was no help for me. I truly believed, I was like, it just is what it is. There was a point where I was like, it is what it is. You got to do as good as you can and hopefully get through this life. Um, But once I got help, I realized, holy crap, there was help. I didn't think there was, and I didn't believe in there was until I got it, and then I got it, and now I'm living the best life I've ever been able to live.
Aw,
And it's yeah, and it's becoming, it's still hard. Like, that's the thing. Like, another thing is, don't assume there's a magic elixir and you're going to be perfect or the
yep,
person you want to be. But now I know that it's like it goes, you know, and so I don't let these, when it goes down, I always tell myself, remember, you're just in a down period. It's no big deal. It's going to end, and it'll end. And then I go, okay, but anyway, I'm rambling, but that's the
I
point. I
get
just
it.
just find out.
I like that. Thank you so much for that. So Mummy Murders, this movie, The Mummy Murders, my gosh, completed in July of 2023. Bunch of different questions. First off, I want to start off with the obvious. Well, to me anyways, it was shot in San Antonio. I understand that. So for those that are watching that have never shot there, is there any sort of large benefit to being in San Antonio in Texas as far as filming goes, whether it's credits, whether it's just availability of locations? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know about the credits as far as, so that would be someone have to do their research if they're looking for locations
Okay.
outside of the city. If they want to come to Texas, I know there's something. I'm just not that privy to it. As far as the one thing I'll say is, having worked in New York and other places, the one thing I love about down here is you could get locations for incredibly cheap, if not free, and really, really cool locations.
Nice.
So that's one thing that is just incredible. Also, on the down low, um, you can steal locations a lot easier than you can in bigger cities that are more. Yeah, I mean, you can get away with a lot more here than any. I mean, I know there's stuff I've done here that in New York would have been shut down in 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
Um, yeah, meaning like sitting, shooting in front of a building,
Yeah.
or shooting on a city sidewalk or something.
Okay.
Um, if you're watching and you're not that familiar with San Antonio, Pee Wee's Big Adventure can give you that. It's Alamo. We got the Alamo here. We've got the
Right.
Riverwalk, and they're also, the Alamo is part of a 5 missions. So there's 4 other missions that look like the Alamo, but they're actually like property state parks. So if you've watched the Mummy Murders, when he stalks the woman about a little over halfway through, and there's that really cool looking sand structure.
Yeah.
That's San Jose mission. That's one of the missions, and there's, like I said, there's state parks. So there's those places. Again, that was, I changed the script last minute. I said to my lead actor Jason, I said, Jason, who played geez,
Hmm.
who played the killer, the mummy murderer. I told him, I said, Jason, I said, I want to. I need to. I was supposed to shoot that scene somewhere else, and I said I want to do it in a more of an interesting location, in a more of a San Antonio legendary kind of location. So we just went down there, and the park rangers saw me, and no one bothered me, and we filmed. So
Awesome.
that's obviously bigger cities. That's going to be hard. So yeah, and really quick, San Antonio particularly offers about I'd say 5 unique looks. There's out west, there's sort of the desert look. That's kind of like No Country for Old Men. You get
Okay.
the hill country, which is kind of like Napa Valley ish, rolling hills and trees. Then you get the south is like the flat plain lands, like another Coen Brothers movie I can't think of, Blood Simple. And then you go east, and it's kind of like farms and cattle and stuff. So you can get a bunch of different looks, and then obviously in the city downtown, you
Yeah.
can get kind of your urban city vibe.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you for that. It's quite thorough. Now we all know we want to go to Texas to film and keep it on the down low about the free stuff because God knows guerrilla filmmaking is still alive and well. Um, so I'm not going to give away too much for those that haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to tiptoe around these things. For those that have watched it, we already know the whole premise, but for most of you who haven't, I'll tell you. The main story centers around our lovely reporter who is sitting in a cafe/coffee shop, and mysteriously someone walks up to her and has a story to tell her, a very interesting story that revolves in some way and in some fashion to her, only she just doesn't know it yet. So, a bunch of interesting questions. I like teaching questions. So first of all, I have to know what made you decide to create this almost constant organ church-like sounding music, so musical score. It's perfectly fit. Where did you get it from, or who composed it?
Yeah, so that was I met a composer on Facebook named James Tierney. He's out of England, actually.
Oh,
We met through a Facebook group. He posted in the group that he does instrumentation and musical scores for movies. Reached
okay.
out to him. He's incredible. He has a website, I believe it's his name, jamestierney.com. And so anyway, I just basically, we spoke on the phone, or I think we spoke through a Google chat or something. Anyway, but and I said to him, I said, he was like, "Well, what do you want?" And I knew I wanted gothic kind of organ Bach type arrangement.
Yeah,
It just felt right to me, an operatic kind of feel to uh the Mummy Murder, the Mummy Murderer's character, the way he paints the women and kind of how he deals with everything. So like, I told him, and he just basically, we never met. Obviously, he's in England, and he would just send me clips that he worked on, and I would say, I like that, slow it down, or can you do like a deeper tone? I'm not a musician in any way, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I would just kind
sure.
of like, I would just feed him, like, okay, so, you know, can you do faster? Oh yeah, yeah, no problem. I'll do it faster. So, and we went back and forth, and honestly, most of the time he was pretty close to dead on the first takes. So I would just give him minor notes, but yeah, we would just go back and forth, and he was incredible. And then any other music outside of the organ music would just be stuff that I got on fair use kind of platforms. But yeah, the
Yeah.
organ stuff was very specific. I knew that I wanted that organ vibe for the film.
It was great. That's terrific. I absolutely loved it. Second thing I want to ask you about is I'm going to guess that for your victims, there were special effects involved. So I'm always fascinated about how people make victims up and things like this. So how arduous of a task was it to actually create a mummified sort of look?
So it was tough. I mean, I work in extremely low budgets, so, and we don't have time. So it was
Oh,
it
yeah.
was hard because we would have to map out, like, okay, so I would ask the makeup person, which actually was a few different people, but I would have to ask them, like, I would show them a picture from something online and say, how long is it going to take to do this? Now, most of the time I would do that before the day of the shoot, and so that I
Okay.
wanted them to know, like, okay, what kind of colors do I need, what kind of makeup. So they would always do kind of like a base coat for the skin to have the deadness of the skin, even though in most cases, the especially with one of the major scenes in the film, she's recently dead, so her skin would still have some
Yeah.
pigment to it. But
Sure.
but they would always create, or she would create an art look, because that was his thing. It would usually take about a couple out, an hour, sometimes shorter, shockingly, but
Oh, okay.
usually about an hour or so. So I would have to like kind of schedule around, because one of the scenes, not giving anything away, but the one we show the whole process of her being killed. So we had to kind of map out, okay, so like we got to shoot this, and this, but
Okay.
then she needs to go into makeup to do the overhaul of the makeup. So I had to think like, okay, so let me do the makeup first, get her showered up and cleaned, and then do her kill, or opposite, right?
Got
And then,
it.
like you said, we had a blood pump effect, so there's a lot going on. Um, for someone working at my budget level, I'm really frightened of blood. It freaks me out because it's so much can go wrong, and I don't have any time. So,
Right.
but in the horror world, it's like, you don't do any blood, you better have a really good premise on your hands.
Yeah, no kidding. I get it. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how people can use such a tiny amount of money and create such a huge thing, a la your movie, of course. Um, One of the things that I noticed that's fascinating about the dynamic of these two characters, not only do they constantly have this cat and mouse sort of conversation going on, but they almost both have this particular lust. Like she has a lust for success. He, of course, has the need to kill, which is almost like a lust of its own. In fact, he even brags about being, I'm an artist, which I think is just such a classic line during this movie. They almost actually play and feed off of one another. And so I always like to ask this question. Either it's very, very good acting or these two have acted together before. So how did you know that these two were going to do so well together in these very strong, tempting roles?
So it was interesting. So Jason Scarborough, who plays the killer,
Mhm.
um, the mummy murderer, I worked. He was a lead actor in a previous movie I did called Remy's Demons,
Mhm.
and he played in that movie. He played an autistic Satan worshiper, and he was incredible in that movie. And so I knew him. I knew there wasn't much I had to do with him. Layla
Okay.
Scott, who plays the reporter, I had never worked with before.
Oh,
So but I saw her work. I loved her work. I knew through other people how professional she was. I had worked I was like a grip on a short film that she was on. So when I say I didn't work with her, I actually did work with her once, but I didn't work with her as a director.
okay.
Anyway, on that shoot, I remember thinking I was the grip and I'm like standing there and I was like, I, I got to cast her in something. Anyway, so years later, I cast her and Jason, I knew how to work with Jason. Jason, you don't over give Jason, you don't over direct or over note him.
Okay.
You give him the notes you need and you let him cook. With Layla, because I hadn't worked with her, her and I met a few times before the shoot, and instantly I was like, oh my God, she gets it. She knew the character. She understood the character. She understood she was bringing so many nuances. Hey, what if I do this? What if I do that? There's a lot of little minor things that you'd probably notice on the second or third viewing that she's doing as an actor, bringing to the story and the character that weren't from me. They were just things she told me, and I said, "Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's totally what she would do." And so they are both. They are honestly a little bit of copy paste, to be honest. I mean, I really stayed out unless I saw something I needed big from them, but
Okay.
I knew that I gave them my general notes. We rehearsed the entire movie before shooting on a Zoom call like this,
Oh, okay.
and that was it. I mean, I saw where they were going. I knew they had it, and then on set, all I did is do refining work of, hey, here's a moment, Jason. This moment here, he's getting upset. I know I told you that he's a sociopath, a psychopath, so he's kind of not in touch with his emotions in that way,
Sure.
but he still knows anger. So here, she pisses him off by this one comment he makes. So like she makes confront that, things like that. But with actors like that, for me, it's sometimes better to just kind of get out of their way and only kind of steer them a little bit, but not try to oversteer them.
Sure, you bet. Now, since Jason is not here, I guess I have to ask you this question, assuming you know it. Now, a lot of times when an actor knows that they're going to be taking on a role, whether the individual is real or not, they want to do preparation or research or try to really enthrall or embrace themselves into this. Did Jason do any of that, or did he kind of just formulate the character as he was on the set or as he was reading the script?
I'd say both, but yes, he definitely did research. I
Ah,
sent him a bunch of real serial killer interviews
okay.
um, from documentaries and things like that. I sent him stuff. He would almost invariably tell me, "Oh yeah, I already watched that one." And he just he's not a method actor, but
Yeah.
he's an actor that does a lot of research. He takes a lot of care in. He's always like telling me, Colin, we can't make this guy. This person, we can't make them two-dimensional, and we can't make this a caricature. And I'm like, yes, 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 please, please. So he took great pains in trying to to be as close to a real serial killer as possible. Obviously, it's not real, so there's an acting
Right.
component and a non-reality component, but and also this is not a true story, so he's not coming at it like I've got to be just like Jeffrey Dahmer was, or I got to be like Ted Bundy. It's like
Yeah.
he's like, okay, so I'm building this other guy, and like you said, the artist part, like, well, what are his quirks? What are his eccentricities that make him a man that would gravitate to killing people in this really eccentric, bizarre way, you know?
Yep, you betcha. Now, those that are watching this might be saying to themselves, okay, it's another horror movie. It's another indie movie. Why should I want to watch it? So, Colin, I'm asking you, tell your audience what distinguishes this horror movie or this indie movie from another.
So I always tell people that I actually myself, so I wrote this script with Will Donahue. Will Donahue did all the heavy lifting, so I don't want to take too much credit. He's an incredible writer. He actually
Mhm.
he lives in Seattle now, but he lived down here then. He was in the Air Force. But this is one of these people who could write like a book in like 5 days. If you said, "Hey, Will, I need a book written," he'll write a book. The reason I went on that little tangent is I want to give credit where credit's due.
Oh, no.
But basically, Will and I came up on my own with the general premise, right?
Yeah.
But then Will and I chopped it, and Will really was the one that kind of sculpted, um, the main character, the killer.
Okay.
And then I kind of focused on her more so. So we both had two assignments because I was like, my biggest fear was the film is a conversation, and I didn't want her to be two dimensional either. Anyway, I'm not answering your question. Answering your question, the reason the audience should, the reason I hope they would watch it or gravitate to it, and why I don't think it's like other movies per se, is that so this is not a serial killer movie in real time of the serial killer's life. This is the serial killer's life story, and diving into his psychology and kind of doing it from a new, different angle. We wanted to really dive into the psychology, but give you other flavors too. But it was important that we create this picture of the psychology of a serial killer and specifically this unique serial killer. So I think that like my view is if you like true crime, you gravitate towards serial killer movies, serial killer documentaries. This is to be for you. I think it's definitely a little bit of it's a different take on that genre. It's not, it doesn't fit into the box of a lot of other serial killer movies. And I think that, like I said, if you're into that genre, this is definitely for you to sort of investigate a movie that's in a little different of a compartment of that general bigger genre, which it would be the serial killer horror film genre.
You bet. Before I forget to ask, I know you have a very unique cinematic style for lighting. So what did you do on this particular set before I forget to ask that?
Yeah, I mean, well, like my background cinematography, so I take great pains. I can't. I really want the films to look as good as possible, but or what it meaning, it doesn't have to look great or pretty, but I I really want the film's look to accent and accentuate the story. So like, I try my best to on a tight budget and on a tight schedule to do the best lighting I can. Um, like I said earlier, I mean, I'm working at razor thin budgets.
Yeah.
The budget for this film was less than $8,000. So, I do most of the lighting myself.
Oh, yeah.
I did have I did have help, but I camera operate myself. I do all the cinematography ends as well as directing. So I don't say that arrogantly. Like I don't want people to think I'm saying I'm anything special. It's actually I would love to have a cinematographer. I can't afford one, so it's all out of necessity. But I'm lucky enough that at least I have that background in it that I'm not sort of like fudging it.
Yeah.
I really I try to look at every scene and say how best cinematically can I conquer this scene with being over the top or just being cinematic to be cinematic. I try. So I mean, but I will say there were some stuff on that on Mummy Murders that were really hard because we didn't have a lot of schedule, we didn't have a lot of time, and we didn't have a lot of money. So we were handling at times 5, 6, 7 scenes a day, and so and different locations. So it's like, as a cinematographer, anyone watching that does that, or even directors that it's like you, lighting takes time, and
Yeah.
lighting takes accuracy and audition, rehearsing shots. And when you don't have that, I've always found I now with my films I try to over schedule so that I can, or under schedule is probably the word I'm looking for. I try to give myself more time nowadays. I'm trying to create budgets and schedules where I have a little bit more buffer, just because there are some stuff in the Mummy Murders that, as a filmmaker, I look back, I'm like, oh, if I only had 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, I could have done this or that. But it's, it is what it is. But yeah, I just, in the film, we definitely, because of the flashbacks and stuff, I wanted to put a color grade on stuff that kind of had, we did a lot of research, looking, I mean, I'm old enough, looking at 70s and 80s photography, and we wanted to have a 70s, 80s look to some of the flashbacks and the coloring and some of the saturation issues that looking back at an 80s picture now would give you, things like that. And then the cafe scenes, I wanted the cafe scenes to be real sharp and granular so that,
Sure.
it felt very edgy and intense. Like the intensity was, we even did some stuff with the shutter to kind of create a little bit more of a sharpness, whereas the flashback stuff were softer, lighting, softer color, the colors were a little bit washed out. I wanted it to feel like you were looking back at old photos.
Nice. Very nice. Now, in addition to having the Mummy Murders out there, I wanted to ask you, you have the upcoming Into the Gravel Pit. What's the status on that one?
Yeah, so Into the Gravel Pit just got picked up by Buffalo 8.
Ooh,
And crazy excited. We're in QC hell. Any filmmakers know what that is. It's nightmare fuel. Every film I've done, it seems to get worse, and I totally respect it and I get it. I'm coming off as a bitter guy, but QC, we're in QC, and we're just trying to survive QC right now. Quality control. If
my
you don't know what
gosh.
QC is, I know you do, but if you're out there going, what is he talking about? Quality control, and just so, but yeah, we Apollo 8's releasing it. We don't have a date yet because they told me once it gets through QC, they'll be able to give me a more window, but it's
Sure.
looking like early 2025, January, February, which is funny because Mummy Murders was released January 2nd, 2024, so it'll be
Yeah.
kind of like 1 year later. That's a total departure. It's a drug trip movie, more gory, so you probably won't be a fan of it, but that one's a lot more about grotesque stuff than the Mummy Murders, being more of a thriller, psychological
Sure.
thriller. This Into the Gravel Pit's a little bit more about, a little bit more grotesque, it definitely has psychology. Obviously, with my OCD background, I think I'm probably a little bit obsessed with psychology, but um, it still has that, but there's more gore in it. Put it this way, I've screened it a few times, and there's a couple moments in the film where everybody's like, I don't want to look at this.
Ah, okay.
So some people will be into that, some people won't. We did a screening recently for local audiences just to get a feedback, and a couple people went to the owner of the establishment and were like, why would you let him show that? So that just gives you a taste of, yeah. It's well, the thing was is that I did Mummy Murders, and I was kind of like, okay, so the thing is, I don't know about you, but like, I definitely read the clippings. I probably shouldn't, but I read like the Amazon critiques by people that aren't my
Sure.
mom, and they're like, they're out there, and like, most of the time people are like, there's no blood or there's no brutality or whatever. So I was like, you know what? Then I'm giving you brutality. You're gonna get brutality. So I came up with a story, and I was like, I wrote it with Ronald Mercado, and I kept pushing him. We wrote it together, and I was like, we gotta have more. Let's push it. She's got to do this to herself. He's got to do that to. So it's a departure. It's definitely an edgier film, but yeah, that'll be out. I definitely will be submitting it to the festival, to your festival, and other places. And I don't want to, that
Yeah.
probably seems
I
shady,
can't wait.
but
I just can't wait for that, because I said when I got on the line with him, I was already afraid of him. Then I was afraid of this movie, and now Colin's coming back with, guess what? It's going to get worse. Great. But just to remind everyone, this is the Colin Bresler, aka scares the shit out of people in a good way, excellent filmmaker and great storyteller. If you want to find him, he is on Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, and of course his website, colinbresler.wixsite.com. And of course, the name of the movie is The Mummy Murders, which is available like all over the place. So please do check.
Tubi,
Yes,
Amazon Prime.
I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Colin
Leave your
Bresler.
reviews. Thank you so much. the festival was amazing. I watched the whole ceremony. And I thank you so much for putting it together. I know you're a filmmaker too, but the fact that
Yes.
you put together a festival to share our work, and then you have an award ceremony to show us the love, and it means so much to have people doing these things, doing festivals with the heart and integrity involved. So I just want to say thank you so much for that, and keep doing it. We need to clone you and create you across the country doing other festivals. But yeah, I'm really grateful. I told everyone about it, and I'm gonna any filmmaker that comes across my plate that's like, I'm looking to do this, I'm going to put them onto you and in your festival and everything. So grateful to you for
Wow.
everything.
Holy cow, you're the man that could actually clone me. I totally could see you making a movie where they're
I
cloning.
think we're going to clone you.
No,
Yeah,
no, we're
can you
good.
mail me a strand of your hair?
Okay, this is getting weird now. Just stopping right now.